I've been wanting to make gumbo for a while, just finally getting around to making it again. I've been making this gumbo recipe for about 6 years or so, and I don't really fine tune it much anymore, but I make more of it than I used to just because I want to have some in the freezer when for the months that pass, because I don't make it that often. I make it once a year, maybe twice. When I do it, I mean, there's a lot of prep involved, a lot of cutting veggies. You can see I'm cutting up the okra now. Yesterday, I cut up, you can see the onions and peppers and celery and the shrimp thawing back there as well. But more I get done the night before, the less time consuming it is the day of. And so I've got chicken, sausage, shrimp. Sausage, I've got 2 pounds of andouille sausage and 2 pounds of raw andouille and 2 pounds of smoked chorizo. I flash freeze the raw andouille sausage. Smoked chorizo is easy to slice, but the raw andouille breaks apart really easily and clumps up. So I flash freeze it for a few hours, and then I can slice it, and then it stays all in one piece. So today, after doing all that pre-prep, all I really have to do is I had to slice the sausage, the chicken, slicing the okra now, and then I gotta slice the onions, and we're ready to go. Okra is very temperamental. I mean, not that we all aren't at times, but I always advise, and I always make sure I buy my okra less than 24 hours before I'm going to use it. Because if you buy any longer than that, you'll notice that when you go to use it, it's really, really slimy. And when you cut it, I can feel it as I'm cutting the caps off here. It's kind of slimy on the inside, so it secretes its inner juices, for lack of a better phrase. So, and then I don't cut it until right before I'm about to start cooking. Sometimes I get the chicken and shrimp, chicken and sausage on first, and then I'll do it. But right now, for sake of entertainment, I'm doing it now. Maybe be a little bit more entertaining if I cut off my finger in the process. But once I get this and the scallions cut up, I'm gonna flare up the burner and get the chicken and sausage rolling and get this whole game on. Okay, everything's prepped and we're rolling. We start out with the sausage in here. Now remember, I've got raw andouille and smoked chorizo. Smoked chorizo, you can eat it kind of like a Slim Jim. It's already cooked, it's already smoked, but that's in here as well. I put the raw andouille in here first. No need for any oil because sausage is obviously pretty fatty, and once you have it sliced open, the fat globule will start to melt. So it makes its own oil. So really we're just going to brown it here, get a nice little coating of drippings on the bottom. When we're done with that, I'm going to put the chicken in here, and then same thing with the chicken. The sausage will be on the side, then the chicken comes out, and then I make the roux, which is going to be the flour and the oil together. Notice the shrimp isn't being incorporated at this point, and I'll talk about that and how easily shrimp cooks and why I'm going to put it in the way I'm going to put it. But sausage is just about browned here, so we're going to wrap it up and get the sausage on the plate, get the chicken cooked up, and then we'll move on. Sausage is done, and on this overflowing plate here, the chicken's in. And again, while you use oil to saute chicken or brown chicken typically, we've already got the drippings from the sausage in there. So we've got our oil. And the first time I made this, I looked at about 5 different gumbo recipes to see what the process was to make it, and made my own recipe out of it. And followed a little bit, and part of it said to put the sausage and chicken on paper towels when you put them on the plate. I'm not doing that, and you can't make me. All the drippings from the sausage is part of what makes the gumbo taste so good in itself. So we're not doing that. Usually you cook things over medium heat, but if you have a gas stove, especially with a double burner like that one, you want to put them pretty low, because once you get a whole pot like this hot, it's difficult to take the temperature down. So, but we do need a little bit more here. And since I double the recipe, you can see all the onions and peppers here. I'm starting getting them cooked now. Oh boy. Because the next step after I'm done with the chicken is I'm going to make the roux, which is, again, it ends up being like a pasty mixture of flour and oil, which is the base for most soups and stews. Even some macaroni and cheese dishes and a lot of baking dishes too call for a light roux. So I'm going to get these started in here because once the roux's done, and I put the onions and peppers and celery in there, all of those, and try to cook them all in here, it's going to take a while to do it. So I'm going to do it on the side in pieces to get them all pre-cooked just a little bit before I put them in there, so it's not such a chore, because then the roux starts to burns to the bottom of the pan, and none of us need that. So that's what's going on here. And the chicken, you just want to cook it until it's no longer translucent, because when you've got this pot simmering for a couple hours and you've got the chicken in there and other things, they're going to cook even more in there. So as long as you get them until they're no longer translucent and no longer secreting raw juices from the outside, then you're pretty good right there. And that's about where we're at with this one. So I'm going to take the chicken out, get the roux moving, and all starts to come together after that. All right, a little different perspective here. I'm going to make the roux now. Now, the roux, for a gumbo, we're going to use a nice dark brown roux. And we call for about a cup of flour and a cup of oil. But you don't want to add it in all at once. It's going to be gradual, because if you add it in all at once, then your flour is going to burn. See how the flour is getting a little pasty here? And it's soaking up the oil. Well, what happens is eventually, now I'm going to add more flour in because we want it to soak up the oil. But what's going to happen then, it gets pasty, and then it starts to brown a little bit more. And then you add a little more oil, then a little more flour, and keep going on until you use up everything that you included in there. So when I use 2 cups of oil and 2 cups of flour, I should end up with about 4 cups of roux or close to that, maybe a little bit more because I already had the drippings in here. So I'll show you what the roux looks like when it's done. As you can see, I've got a good amount of roux here. It's nice and pasty. It's going to be browning now since it's pretty dried out from soaking up all the oil. I'm going to put a little bit more oil in here just because, well, think of what you're going to do next. The next steps are I'm going to add those green onions not the green onions, onions, peppers, and celery in here. And I don't want this stuff to really cook to the side of the pan and get really crusty, because I'm not going to be able to see it with all that stuff in there. The next step after that is put the chicken broth and garlic in there. So I'm going to put a touch of chicken broth in here to break it up a little bit, then put the veggies in there, and then the garlic, then the rest of the broth and the bay leaves, and then we'll bring in the meat. Okay, band's all back together again. Chicken and sausage are in here with all the veggies. Added some Worcestershire sauce, Creole seasoning, dried thyme, and everything's mixed in well. We've got a couple bay leaves in there. I think we have 4 bay leaves in there. We're right about to the top here. I probably could go a little bit more, but I'm going to wait till I put in the shrimp and the okra and green onions. The last things that have to go in. I'm going to let this simmer for about another half hour, then I'm going to put those in there. And at that point, I'll add some more broth. The basic recipe that I had called for 96 ounces of chicken broth. So 2 of those big cans. I doubled the recipe. So I put in 4 cans. Actually, I bought 6 cans, and I think, actually before I even started, I put them all in here to see how high they would rise. I think they rose just past halfway, so I better be careful and not put all the broth in at once. I don't want it to overflow. So this is about what I have left. Probably one of those cans, maybe a little less, or maybe a little more, but we'll see what happens. I'll be able to add some of that in there, because when I make this maybe twice a year, I don't want to just eat it twice a year. So the more broth I have, I can have it in the freezer, and it will thicken up, especially overnight. The roux is your base, which really starts the thickening of your sauce, of your soup. When I make spaghetti sauce, same thing. You got all your ingredients. As long as you're not diluting it too much, you'll still have the same flavor profile, but you don't want to dilute it too much. If you do add more, you might want to add more of some of your spices and other ingredients. So we'll let this simmer a little bit, and then we'll get the chicken, the shrimp in there, and the okra and green onions. Top it off, let it simmer another half hour. I think we're gonna be good. I think it's pretty easy to tell some time has passed since our last simmering update. You can see in here, chicken sausage. The shrimp is nice and pink and curled up and hardened up as per typical shrimp once it gets blanched. And then some, because our water was obviously boiling, so it's I'm tone down a little bit here. We got about 2 inches of space between the top of the fluid and the pan. So the stock pot, just pour that all in there. Well, that's great. 6 cans worked right to the top there. That'd be good. I'll gumbo for a while, depending on how much of it I give away in the near future, but we'll let that simmer for a little while longer, and we're gonna be good to go. Just gotta cook the rice and be able to sample this. All right, it's time for our taste test of our first bowl of this batch of gumbo. I got some rice in there, just basic medium grain white rice. About 2 or 3 tablespoons on the bottom, depending on how big your bowl is. This one, probably about somewhere in between there. A little gumbo filet for the top. I'm not sure why it goes on top and not inside, but this is just ground sassafras leaves. No real idea of the history, but it goes on top, not while you're cooking. Probably put about a half teaspoon on top of here. And I like some oyster crackers in there, so we'll get these guys in, because the rice on the bottom isn't apparently enough carbs. And let's get this boy moving. That andouille sauce is just so good, and it's fresh. It just flavors the whole dish. And you get the chorizo and the chicken. And it's so important not to overcook the meat, because you've got it sitting in there for so long. Like I said, when you're first cooking it, you just want to initially brown it so it's not raw on the edges and it's not secreting raw juice all over the rest of the ingredients. And then it's cooking from the inside out for the rest of the dish while it's in that hot water, which is almost boiling, so it's probably between 150 and 200 degrees most of the time. Dried out meat really can impact the whole dish when it's just as perfect as that. Even the shrimp was in there. It was raw when I put it in there, and I only had it simmering for about 45 minutes. The water wasn't even boiling. It's perfect. I mean, you could buy raw shrimp, salad shrimp, cooked, and throw it in there at the very end. You throw it in there raw, it's porous. It's going to absorb all the flavor of the whole dish and give off some flavor as well. Good stuff.